Hi, I'm Joe and welcome to the channel. In this Inspired By series, I like to write an original piece of music, either inspired by an artist or a genre of music. In this one, we're going to learn how to play acoustic singer-songwriter guitar. The goal's kind of simple. I play a track for you, and then I break down all the guitar parts. Hopefully this will inspire you, and maybe you can incorporate these ideas into your own music. Let's go ahead and jump into the track, and I'll break it all down for you. One of the great things about the acoustic singer-songwriter genre itself is that besides the vocal, the acoustic instrument, and in this case obviously the guitar, really gets to play a primary role in the arrangement. And that's somewhat different. If you listen to some of the old Eagles songs, lots of times you're not even hearing necessarily the notes of the acoustic guitar. It's used more as a percussive instrument where you just hear the pick kind of keeping the rhythm and you really don't hear so much notes coming out of it. Well, in the acoustic songwriter genre, we can again emphasize the guitar parts and make them a little bit more interesting. Now, one of the key things that you might want to invest in if you haven't already is a capo. Using a capo obviously then lets you use more of the open string chords shapes than if you didn't have one, if you had to play in different keys and bar them. But why open strings are important, it really lets the notes ring out more when you're playing in this genre. So again, I would recommend that you kind of invest in a capo if you haven't done so already. And also the nice thing about a capo too is it really helps you move the instrument into different ranges or frequency ranges in the mix itself or in the arrangement. So lots of times you have the bass playing the low notes and the singer's up there singing, and you want to find a nice mid-range part, if you will, for the guitar, or sometimes even a higher register guitar part to double on the normal guitar part. It really just emphasizes and brings out the acoustic instrument a little bit more. So having a capo really gives you a flexibility of using different voicings, but in voicings that you're kind of familiar with using. So in this case here, what we're going to do is we're really playing in the key of F, but I'm going to be using very similar shapes that you know, which is the D shape here, we'll have the G shape here, we'll have the A shape here for this song. So again, the capo, can't recommend it enough if you haven't got one yet already. Alright, let's jump into the guitar parts. So there's two guitars going on, but they're really playing the same thing. And what's nice about that is that you're allowed then to, in the mix, basically pan them left and right. It adds a fuller sound, but it doesn't necessarily put things right down the middle where the vocal is. So for this case here, I only did one variation on the second guitar part, but for the first guitar part and the second guitar part, they're basically identical except again in one area, and I'll show you that in a second. So part one, or the intro of the song, which later turns into the chorus of the song, really just starts off with this idea that's very common, which is kind of a descending bass line. So we start with the D shape, which is again F, and then we're going to put our pinky down on the A string to pick up the E, Then our first finger will pick up the D here, and then an open C. So you really have this walking bass line again. And then when we finish it off, we'll play a G shape, which will be a B flat. So again, the bass line is. But now what we're going to do is add the chords on top. And it's a very simple part. And what I'm trying to do on top here is I'm trying to leave these common notes in here just to add continuity to the chord progression. So I'm really holding the D almost the whole time, except when I get here when I need to use my first finger to pick up the D note here, and then. So a very simple part, but again, with that walking bass line, it adds just some movement to the part. And the second guitar part does the same thing, except it arpeggiates the B flat. And if you're not yet used to it, obviously you can see here I'm not using a pick. So this really gives you an opportunity to practice with basically your fingers and not using a pick, but in a very simple, easy way. You notice I'm not really doing anything complicated. It's like I'm doing a strum, but I'm just plucking all the strings. And for that, I'm using my thumb on the D string, and then my first finger, second finger, third finger to take care of the next set of strings. And it's just a pull up. And then I use my thumb to walk down that bass line. So again, this is a real easy part to get used to using your fingers if you haven't done so already. And then for that arpeggiated part, I'm just using my thumb, first finger, second finger, third finger. And now they're spread across the D string, the G string, and the B string. And then I come back down. So if you're not used to finger picking, I would just recommend that you kind of pick a chord and just try to go in order of your fingers. So thumb, first, second, third, backwards. And I know at first that kind of sounds boring because you're playing it slow, but what you're trying to do is get the dexterity in your fingers to play these parts. And then later on you can do more complicated patterns with your fingers. But for now, just try to get that down. So that's the first part of guitar part 1 and 2. The second guitar part is going to basically introduce a motif. The idea here is that in singer-songwriter land, your guitar part again can be a little bit more predominant in the arrangement. And what I'm trying to do is make a little bit of a hook in itself, the guitar part in itself. I'm trying to make that a hook. So not just like the vocal melodies and the chorus hooks that you're used to, but try to think about ways to make some little motifs and, again, hook parts inside of your guitar lines. So what do I mean by that? Well, for the D, I'm doing this. And all I'm doing is I'm adding on that sus4 with my pinky. And that's creating a little bit of a motif. When I go to the next chord, I do the same thing. Next chord. So you can see in the chord progression itself, I'm actually trying to build this motif and add it to all the chords. It spices up the traditional chord. If I were to play this just as the traditional chord shapes or the open chord shapes, it would sound like this. And there's nothing wrong with that. Sometimes that's what the song calls for. But again, I'm trying to add a little bit of movement in the guitar part and create those little ear candy for the listener to pick up on. And then instead of playing the E minor shape here, I'm going to play the E minor shape up here, but still use my thumb on the bass note, so I can keep that motif going. And for this G shape, all I'm doing is I'm adding my first finger on the G string to pick up the second. Back to the D shape. And then I'm doing like a sus4, A sus4. Obviously it's C sus4, but it's the A shape. So from this part, I just want to encourage you to try to add different fingerings that you're maybe not used to doing. Like most people would go here for the E minor shape. But I'm trying to kind of voice lead to bring it up. And also notice what I'm doing there. I'm adding a little bit of vibrato to the note, to the chord at the end. And when they're doubled, it really kind of adds a little bit of a chorus effect when you're slightly vibrating those notes. So for the bridge of the song, I'm doing a kind of a common technique where we're playing in a major sound, the F major. I'm going to go to the relative minor, which would be the D minor chord. But I'm going to make it a D minor 7, so I'm taking my pinky and I'm lifting it up to expose that 7th down here. And then I'm using, after that, an inversion of the A chord, but I'm putting the 3rd in the bass. So this is a C because of the capo, and I'm putting the E in the bass. So an inversion basically is this: if you have, again, the C triad, which is made up of the notes C, E, G, instead of playing the C as the root, I'm adding the 3rd. So that makes it a first inversion because I'm using the 3rd as the bass note. And you can have a second inversion where you would have the G as the bass note. But in this case here, I'm just using this first inversion. And it kind of brings you that bass line that's ascending again. And what I'm doing here again is I'm just finger picking this part out. So it's not the plucking at the chorus. It just brings a little bit something different, or different sonic sound, or rhythmic sound even, to the music. And then I'm doing a common thing that you'll hear where it's basically a descending bass line, but shorter chords. So this whole time in the song, we've been playing these longer for the verses. We have really short for the chorus and the intro. So for now, I'm trying to find a middle ground here with the bridge line. So when you think about music and composing, always try to think in contrast. You know, when you have a certain guitar part in one part of the song, what can you do that's kind of different in the next part of the song? And just try to vary things up. And for me, the bridge is tying both of those ideas together. So the bridge part walks down, and basically all I'm doing is I'm playing the G shape, which is a B flat in this case. The D shape again, which is an F, but again, I'm using an inversion, so I'm wrapping my thumb around to grab the A here to get the 3rd in the bass. And I'm going to a normal C, which is the A shape I'm using here. I do that twice. And you go right back into the chorus. And that's really the whole song. So some key takeaways and things to practice. If you're not yet used to finger picking, I would recommend again just doing some basic patterns with your fingers and just assign a finger to a string, basically, and just walk through some chords. If you haven't invested already in the capo, I would recommend you playing with one. What's nice about it too is that it kind of puts you in a different mind when you're writing music. You can actually break out of some of your ruts by putting a capo on and just trying different voicings and things. And another thing to think about too is contrast again in your musical parts. So when you're writing these guitar parts down and you're just thinking of ideas, if you had a certain vibe or feeling or a certain note duration or things of that nature in one part of the song, think about what would the opposite be that you can include in the next section of your song. That's another Inspired By video down. Hey, if you have any suggestions of some other artists or genres of music you might like me to chase in the series, go ahead and leave them in the comments below. And also, while you're down there, would you do me a favor? I'm really trying to grow the channel. Would you help me out by either subscribing down below or hitting the like button? All these things really do help me out, and I'm so grateful for your support. As always, I wish you a wonderful day.